She'll listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video if you enjoy that chill before sleep. It helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift. Between Dreams and Shadows, setting the atmosphere. The first time I saw her, she was standing at the foot of my bed, silent and still as the dark itself. My name is Ethan Cross, 29, systems analyst by day, insomniac by night. Sleep has never come easy for me. Maybe it was the years of late-night coding, maybe just my overactive mind. But lately, sleep didn't just evade me, it tormented me. It began a few weeks ago, in my new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in an older building on the edge of the city. The kind of place that felt lived in before you ever brought in a box. The walls held stories, quiet and buried beneath layers of paint and time. There was a peculiar stillness to the place, like it was listening, watching. The nights were the worst. They stretched longer than I remembered. Time became fluid, slipping through my fingers as I lay there, half aware, lost between dreams and waking. It wasn't just insomnia. It was something else. I'd lie frozen in bed, body paralyzed while my mind screamed to move. Sometimes it lasted a few seconds, sometimes minutes. But in that sliver of helpless time, I saw her. She wasn't just a shadow or a figment. She had long, tangled black hair that draped over her face. Her limbs were too long, too still. She wore what looked like a nightgown, torn, stained, and whispering of another time. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I could only stare as she loomed near, her form barely lit by the moonlight seeping through my curtains. Each time she came, I woke up drenched in cold sweat, gasping for breath, my body shaking with a fear I couldn't explain. It felt too real. The doctor said it was classic sleep paralysis, a misfiring brain during REM sleep. Harmless, he called it. But this didn't feel harmless. This felt intentional. At first, I tried to ignore it. I buried myself in routines, in work, in caffeine, and podcasts, and white noise apps. But even wide awake, I began to sense something, a subtle wrongness, a weight in the air, a tension that clung to me like cobwebs. Sometimes I'd feel it behind me in the kitchen, or just outside the bathroom door. Not a sound, not a shadow, just the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Not with curiosity, but familiarity, like it knew me, and every night. When sleep finally dragged me down, there she was, waiting. Only now, she was getting closer. The first signs of disturbance it started subtly to mention to anyone, without sounding ridiculous. The first incident was with the kitchen drawer. I remembered closing it. I was sure of it. But when I walked back in moments later, it was half open, as though someone had gone through it carefully, then forgotten to hide the evidence. I stood there, staring at it, trying to rationalize what had happened. Maybe I didn't shut it properly. Maybe it slid open on its own. But drawers don't slide against gravity. The next night, I noticed the hallway mirror had shifted, just a few inches, tilted slightly downward, enough that it caught a strange angle of the ceiling and angle that reflected nothing but shadow. I tried adjusting it, but it refused to stay straight. It would always fall back into that same skewed position. And then the plants. My little collection of succulents near the windowsill began to wither. Not gradually overnight. Leaves blackened. Stems collapsed in on themselves. I hadn't changed anything. Same light, same water, same routine. It was as if something unseen had brushed across them, stealing life as it passed. I began keeping notes. Times, dates, details. Trying to convince myself I wasn't going insane. But even as I wrote them down, a deep unease settled into my bones. Something wasn't just wrong, something was changing. The temperature in the apartment began to fluctuate. I'd wake up shivering despite the summer heat, my breath visible in the air. My clock would blink 3:33 a.m. without fail, even if I'd reset it earlier that evening. Every night. The same hour, the same chill. The same sense that she was getting closer. My reflection grew, off. I started to avoid mirrors. Sometimes, when I caught sight of myself in one, I looked different. My expression was mine, yes, but it lingered a second longer than it should have when I turned my head, as though the image itself hadn't gotten the message to follow. And always, the feeling of being watched persisted. Not constantly, but often enough to make me tense. I'd sit down with my back to a room and feel the unmistakable prickle on my neck. I'd turn around slowly, never too fast, as if afraid to actually catch her there, and nothing would be out of place. But I knew. I started sleeping with the lights on. All of them. I even unplugged my bedroom lamp and switched it for a brighter one. But the brightness never reached the corners of the room. No matter how powerful the bulbs, those corners drank the light, pulling it into themselves like deep wells. That's when I noticed the shadows weren't behaving. They didn't stretch naturally from the light source. Sometimes they moved in the wrong direction. Sometimes they didn't move at all. And sometimes, when I blinked, I could swear one of them had shifted a few inches closer. The rational part of my mind kept trying to explain it away. Stress, fatigue, an overactive imagination fueled by too many late nights and too many horror movies. But deep down, another part of me, quieter, older, primal, knew the truth. Something was here. It was inside my home, inside my sleep, inside me. The sound that shouldn't exist. The silence in my apartment was no longer just silence. It had weight to it, texture, a living quality. And then, the sounds began. It started one night just after 3:30 a.m., when I lay half awake, too afraid to close my eyes, too tired to get up. My body buzzed with that strange static tension, kind that came just before sleep paralysis took hold. I'd learned to recognize it. I hated it, and then I heard it. A hum, faint, barely there, like the low frequency of something running deep beneath the floorboards. It pulsed irregularly, more like breathing than electricity. I held my breath, listening, trying to tell myself it was the refrigerator, or the pipes, or the apartment above me. But the hum didn't come from above. It came from everywhere, and nowhere. It was in the walls. The next night, the hum returned, and it brought something else with it, a whisper. So soft I thought it might be my own thoughts. But no, the cadence wasn't mine. It wasn't a coherent language, but it wanted to be. The sounds rolled over each other in delicate, almost melodic tones, words just out of reach. I froze, listening. It was coming from behind the closet door. But the door was closed, and the whispering didn't stop. It persisted like a secret being told from inside the wood, inside the walls themselves. I sat up, in bed, and the whispering stopped, dead silent. But only for a moment. Then it came again, but this time, closer, not from the closet, from beside the bed. I turned slowly, feeling the air grow thick, heavy like syrup. I saw nothing, no shape, no figure, but the sound remained an impossible whisper, looping over, itself like a record warped by time. I began recording audio on my phone while I slept, hoping to capture anything to prove this wasn't all in my mind. The first few nights, there was nothing, static, the occasional creak. Normal. Then came the night of June 4th. I woke up feeling raw, like something had scraped across my consciousness while I was out. I checked the recording, and that's when I heard it. Double quotes, EEE, ... My name, not clearly, but unmistakable. The syllables dragged, like someone trying to form them for the first time in centuries. And then, laughter high-pitched, inhuman, like glass being dragged across a chalkboard. Warped into something resembling a giggle. I dropped my phone. The rest of the audio was worse. Under the laughter, there were more voices. Layers of them, whispering on top of one another, like a choir of the dead chanting, sobbing, calling out in a language that didn't belong on this side of reality. I've never felt so exposed, not even when I was staring into her face during those paralyzing dreams. This wasn't just my brain. Misfiring. Something was aware of me. It was trying to communicate, or mocking my attempts to understand it. From that night on, the sounds never stopped, not even during the day. I'd hear faint taps behind the walls while I worked, whispered breathing from the vents, a metallic rattle beneath the bed when I dared to try napping. Always there, always watching. I tried playing white noise to drown it out, but that only made it worse. Sometimes, buried within the white noise itself, I'd hear something else emerge, like the static was a medium, and they were speaking through it. Every attempt to silence the whispers just gave them another channel. I could no longer trust the quiet, because now, even the silence was speaking. The presence without a face. At some point, you stop questioning whether something is real, not because you find proof, but because it becomes impossible to deny its effects. I wasn't just afraid to sleep anymore, I was afraid to be alone. But what do you do when you realize you're never truly alone, even in an empty room? The apartment grew colder, not like the drop of a thermostat, but the deep cold that seeps into your bones. The kind that reminds you of standing in a room where something awful once happened. That kind of cold doesn't leave, it clings. I stopped using the bedroom altogether. I began sleeping on the couch, the television playing static or reruns just to keep the space from going completely still. It didn't help. I always woke up at 3:33 a.m., the same time, with the same paralysis, and the same presence. She didn't need to be visible anymore. Her being filled the space, her pressure, her attention. I could feel it thick and oppressive, like something had its hand pressed gently, yet deliberately, against my chest. Not enough to hurt, just enough to remind me she was there. And the worst part, she had stopped appearing in my dreams. That should have brought relief, but it didn't, because the disturbances continued, and they were no longer confined to sleep. I'd walk into a room and smell decay, brief, sharp, and unnatural. I'd find objects out of place, my phone placed upside down on a shelf I hadn't touched in days, a mug, still warm, sitting on the bathroom sink. I live alone. Books fell off shelves with no provocation, always the same ones, pages opened to passages about dreams, shadows, death. The television would turn on by itself, displaying only a black screen, except for one faint detail, a silhouette reflected in the screen's glare, one that didn't match the room. But the most horrifying moment came on a Sunday morning. I'd finally slept, somehow. And when I woke, groggy but mobile, I stumbled into the bathroom. As I stood over the sink, I felt a chill and looked up into the mirror. She was standing behind me, not reflected directly, but her presence distorted the reflection. The light around her seemed bent, warped, as if the mirror was resisting her shape. Her face was still hidden behind a curtain of matted hair, but this time, she moved. She lifted her head, just slightly enough for me to see that where her face should have been was only skin. Pale, seamless skin. No eyes, no mouth, number, features. Just a blank slate of horror. I turned, heart exploding in my chest. No one was there, but the mirror no longer showed me. It showed my room, empty. From the ceiling, looking down, I blinked, and the reflection returned to normal. I backed away. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply stood there, because something deep inside me had shifted. I understood something that I hadn't before. It was no longer about seeing her. It was about her seeing me. She didn't need a face to watch me. She never had. She had known me long before I knew her. Her presence wasn't about haunting. It was about claiming. The unspoken warning patterns began to emerge, as if the disturbances were no longer random, as if she was communicating, not with words, but with events, arrangements, choices. Every small change in my apartment began to feel deliberate. Books fell to pages that echoed my thoughts. The power would go out for exactly 13 minutes, only to return the moment I whispered her name in the dark. Objects moved incrementally 1 inch left, 2 inches right, a door that creaked open, just enough for me to notice. She wanted me to know she was guiding this. Each night, the events escalated in precision. My kitchen clock, which hadn't worked in months, began ticking againly. It ticked backward, second by second, as if counting down from a moment that hadn't arrived yet. That same night, I found something on my pillow when I came home. A black feather, slick with an oily sheen that reeked of iron and something older. I don't own anything feathered. There were no open windows, no trace of how it got there. But when I touched it, I saw a flash behind my eyes just for an instant. A stairwell made of bone. A child's voice humming a lullaby in reverse. A faceless girl standing at the bottom, beckoning upward. The vision vanished. The feather turned to ash in my hand. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid they'd think I was crazy, but because saying it out loud felt like an invitation. By then, I had stopped trying to fight the occurrences. I simply observed them, documented them like a lab rat watching its own maze. I was afraid, but it had evolved into something deeper than fear. It was reverence, and then came the envelope, slipped beneath my door in the early hours. No return address, no postage, just my name on the front, scrawled in a sharp, elegant script I'd never seen before. Inside was a single Polaroid. Photos. It was a picture of me, asleep in my bed. The timestamp in the corner read 3:33 a.m. I couldn't breathe. I felt stripped bare, violated, but not surprised. I knew it wasn't just a warning, it was a message. I see you. I know you. I was there before you knew I existed. Beneath the photo, on the back, a line was written in the same script. You're almost ready? Ready for what? That question gripped me tighter than any hand ever could. Later that week, my neighbor, an elderly woman I had only seen in passing, knocked on my door. Her eyes were dull, her mouth trembling. She didn't speak at first. She simply handed me a worn crucifix and whispered, "She doesn't like to be named, but she likes being remembered." Then she walked away. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The crucifix turned warm in my hand, then hot. I dropped it, and it split clean in two. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just haunting me. It had plans, and I had been following its design without even realizing. There were no coincidences anymore, only signs, and they were all pointing to the same dark truth. I was being prepared. The moment of truth, I stopped pretending I had control. I stopped pretending this was just happening to me. By now, I understood something vital, something terrible. This wasn't random. Every cold breath in the dark, every shadow out of sync, every echo of her voice in the static it had been leading me here. And now, I had a choice: run or understand. The moment of truth came on a night just like the others, or so I thought. It was raining, soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. The kind of rain that lulls the city into uneasy sleep. I sat alone on the couch, Lights dimmed, TV off, no sound except the rain, and the ticking of the backwards clock in my kitchen. 3:25 a.m. I should have felt tired. I wasn't. My body was calm, too calm, as though my nerves had been replaced by still water. In that stillness, I heard the sound again, not the whispers this time. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps at my bedroom door, not the front door. The bedroom door. The room I hadn't entered in weeks. I froze, breath shallow. Every instinct screamed, "Don't move." But another voice, one that wasn't mine, but sounded far too familiar, whispered, "She's waiting for you." I stood, not because I was brave, but because the air pulled me forward, like the pressure in a dream where your feet glide without touching the floor. I approached the bedroom door. The hallway light flickered once, then held steady. The door was ajar. A sliver of pure blackness stared back. Not darkness. Blackness like the absence of color, of shape, of sense. It didn't reflect the hall light. It absorbed it, swallowed it. I placed a trembling hand on the door and pushed it open. The room was unchanged, but colder. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper than they should have been. My bed sat undisturbed, sheets made as though no one had ever slept there, and in the center of the bed a figure, not moving, not breathing, just waiting, hair long, dripping wet, even in the dry room, head down, arms at her side. The girl, she didn't move, but I knew she saw me. I stepped inside. The door shut behind me on its own gently, like a mother tucking a child in. I stood still, heart pounding, and something strange happened. The fear didn't increase. It stopped, like reaching the eye of a storm. The girl slowly lifted her head. I don't know what I expected. A blank face again, a mouth full of teeth, hollow eyes. No, she had a face now. My face, slightly older, slightly twisted, as if the features had been etched from memory and smeared by time. Her lips moved, but the words weren't spoken aloud. They echoed inside me. You invited me, every night, every thought, every fear. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I wanted to run, but I didn't, because in that moment, the truth anchored deep in me. This wasn't an invasion, it was a return. I hadn't been haunted by something other. I had been haunted by what waited within, and I had finally opened the door wide enough to let it take shape. Behind her, the room began to shift walls, bending inward, the air thickening. A low sound like a heartbeat in reverse. The hum again, growing, louder, and her voice, "One last time, one more step, and you'll remember everything." The inevitability of darkness. There are moments that do not belong to time, moments where the air seems held in suspension, where thought stretches thin and fragile. That's what this was. Not a second, not a dream, but a crossing. I stood before her, this thing wearing my face like a softened mask, and I realized there was no barrier left, no veil, no division between dream and wakefulness, between what I feared and what I was becoming. I didn't remember walking toward her, but I was no longer across the room. I was standing inches away. She didn't touch me. She didn't have to. Her eyes, now open, were not eyes at all. They were mirrors, not reflecting me, but something behind me, something older, vast, empty. And when I looked into them, I saw myself, unraveling, not dying, not fading, expanding, expanding. And then I was somewhere else, a hallway, familiar but impossible, endless doors, lining each side. I knew it instantly. The place I always saw in the corner of my dreams. That hallway I could never walk down, until now. Behind each door, I felt a version of myself. Slightly wrong, slightly twisted. One sobbed, one laughed, one repeated my name again and again in a broken whisper. Another stood completely still, waiting for me to open the door, and the further I walked, the less I recognized the person I had been. She was always just ahead, never walking, never rushing, just there. A presence at the edge of my perception, turning corners, as if my thoughts formed the walls behind her. I called out, "What are you? What do you want?" Her voice responded, but not from in front of me. From within me. "You already know." And I did. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a demon. She was a truth. A memory. One-eyed buried deep. I remembered now barely, vaguely those childhood nights when I would freeze in bed, too afraid to scream, the shadows stretching wrong, whispering lullabies that had no melody. I remembered waking up and finding my nails bloody from clawing at the wall beside my bed. I remembered her, standing over me as a child, in a dream I told myself never happened. She had waited. All these years. Waited until I was ready. Until I was empty enough to carry her again. I felt the hallway collapse into blackness, the doors falling inward like teeth in a yawning mouth. And through that darkness, I understood. This was not the kind of fear that passes with time, or therapy, or light. This was the kind that becomes you, a slow erasure of who you are, until all that remains is the thing you invited in. The hum returned, deep, now, endless, like the sound of the universe dying. And her voice, once more, "You're almost home." I opened my mouth to scream. No sound came, only static, the fear that stays. They found me the next morning. Neighbors complained of loud humming, a high-pitched frequency that pulsed through the walls all night. When they knocked, I didn't answer. When the landlord used his spare key, I was sitting upright in my bed, eyes open, unmoving. I don't remember getting there. I don't remember leaving the hallway, but I was there, in the physical world, breathing, awake. Except, I wasn't. They said I didn't speak for 3 days. Just sat, still, staring at a corner of the ceiling. The same corner where I first saw her. When I came to, if you can call it that. Ty wasn't relieved. I felt hollowed out, as if my thoughts echoed inside me now, with too much space to travel. I tried to tell myself it was a psychotic break, sleep deprivation, trauma. But then the dreams continued only. Now I wasn't the one trapped in them. I was watching them, from above, as if something had switched places with me. That's the thing no one tells you about fear. If you survive it, it lingers. Not like a scar, not like pain, but like a memory you can't quite place. Only feel a vibration just beneath your bones. The nights are quiet now. She doesn't appear in the mirror. She doesn't whisper from the walls. But sometimes, when I pass a reflective surface, I don't see myself, not immediately. I see her just for a second, smiling content, because she got what she wanted. She never had to kill me. She didn't have to possess me. She just had to be remembered. And now she's part of me, woven in the folds of my sleep, my thoughts, my reflection. Every moment, I close my eyes. I don't know if I'll wake up as me. Sometimes, when I speak, I hear an echo behind my words that doesn't belong to me. It sounds like her voice, and sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I wake up paralyzed. But she's not in the corner, she's in my skin, looking out, smiling with my face, waiting for someone else to remember her. Because fear, once born, never dies. It only waits. Could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think really happened to me? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and, if you dare, explore another tale before bed. The night is long, and not everything in your dreams is imaginary.